Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to another fantastic episode of Shoot the Five with myself, Xavier Porter, and our co-host, Pat DeMoss. We have a special guest with us today. We have Heather, the Heat Hardy. We are excited to have Heather on the show. As you know, she's one of the best female boxers in the world, undefeated, and also she's taken part in many events within Bellator, and I know she's looking to get back into possibly the ring or the cage soon. But today we have Heather on the show to discuss a lot of things, not just within the boxing and the sport of MMA, but also how important it is to show the women out there that you can accomplish and be anything that you want to be in life. So Heather, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Now, there are some things that you experience in life that you overcome. Would you mind sharing that with some of the listeners out there?
Well, I think we've all overcome things, right? Like the things that may have happened to me in my life might not necessarily be any different than what someone else goes through. I mean, the moral of the story is like when times are hard, you face a storm, you have to walk through it to get to the other side.
I definitely agree. Have you have any questions?
Yeah, so, how did you get into MMA? Like, what was the main focus for you to transition into that sport?
Well, unfortunately, boxing is a real old-school sport, and women really don't get the representation, especially earlier in my career. When I was making my pro debut, that was the first year women were allowed to box in the Olympics. And, fast forward to when I was 19-0, the night I fought Shelly Vinton on NBC was the night Clarissa Shields won her second gold medal. So women's boxing has really come a long way since I started. But at my age, I don't really have the time to wait for women's boxing to start giving us good paychecks and giving us television spots and sponsorships and so forth. So I made a crossover to MMA shortly after my 20th fight. I was doing my 20th professional fight, defending my WBC belt, I sold 40 grand in tickets at the Barclays Center, and they put me on before they even opened the doors. So I was walking out to my song, and not one person was in the crowd to clap their hands, and I just thought, you know what, I don't have the time to wait for this. MMA embraces their female athletes. There are so many more opportunities, so I thought, why not give it a shot? And that's what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Figures like Ronda Rousey and, Chris Cyborg have certainly paved the way for women to transition into the sport and actually have a growing fan base, like you mentioned. How are you feeling the transition is going so far, with your 3 fights in women?
I'm happy with my 3 fights. And a lot of people thought after my second fight when I took that loss and I broke my nose that I would run away from it. But the thing about MMA was that I was going in to take a chance. I was trying it out, taking a chance, I didn't go in saying, I'm going to be better than everyone because I'm the best boxer. I just wanted the chance to show what I can do. So, a lot of people would say, like after the boys I had done interviews, and people would say, oh, do you feel like it was a failure? And I would never feel like that because for my very first MMA fight, I won by knockout in Madison Square Garden. And I was down on my knees in Madison Square Garden, and I heard 30,000 people were cheering my name, to see my dad after crying, never being able to imagine that would happen. So there's no amount of losses in a row that could ever take away how great that was, and every chance I might take in the future just to have that happen again.
Yeah, you mentioned the criticism you received, from the transition, but I think a lot of people forget, a lot of female boxers, like Holly Holm, have had successful MMA careers transitioning. Are you feeling like your overall game at this point in your career is coming to a point where you can be a serious contender in Bellator?
I think that when you have hands like I have hands, I always stand a chance. My second fight showed that I have a lot to work on, but I never count myself out because my boxing is so superior to everyone else's. So will I sit here and say that I'm that one of the best or that I deserve a title shot? Absolutely not. I have not put the work in like these other girls have to even consider being in line for a title. I have 3 professional MMA fights. Nowhere near do I deserve it. More than a girl like, a Valerie or Emily Dakota, those girls who have been in there for so long, fighting the top girls, going out there fighting anybody and they put in front of them. Those are girls who deserve a title shot, not me. I'm still a rookie.
How do you feel Bellator as far as marketed you?
I love Bellator. I really like. Everyone's like, "Oh, do you want to go to the UFC? Is that your goal?" And I'm like, "God, no! I love Bellator. I love what they do for the fighters. I love the promotions. I love how interactive they are. Constantly checking it. Even when I don't have a fight, the guys will call my manager and say, "Heather, okay? How's she feeling? How's training coming?" You know, like that's a real promotional team that stands behind their athletes, and I'm super proud to be a part of it.
And one last quick question. I'm not saying anything here, but do you have a fight lined up right now currently or no?
Well, I can't really discuss it because we're in contract. So I don't like to talk about fighting and what I'm going to do next until contracts are signed. So I'm staying in the gym. I'm ready. I've gone back to my dieting and my strength and conditioning training. I'm going to be ready for whatever rolls out.
I see. Well, I certainly look forward to seeing you in the cage. Hopefully that contract pans out. And I've actually watched your debut. I think I've seen two of your 3 fights thus far, and they're always entertaining. So,
thanks.
No problem.
Well, you definitely covered the MMA side. So, Pat, thank you for that. Heather, when you talk about the promotion and what goes into your fights in the Bellator and MMA, how is it different from within boxing, within your career in boxing?
Well, boxing promoters really don't promote their fighters. And I don't say that just because I'm a woman. I say that in general. I mean, Terence Crawford could walk into a crowded room, and unless you're a boxing fan, most people wouldn't know who he was. Perhaps one of the best fighters ever. Pound for pound, one of the greatest. And probably 9 out of 10 regular people off the street wouldn't even know who he was. And that's because boxing promoters aren't promoting their fighters.
In what sense? Pushing.
They don't put them on TV. They don't have sports advertisements. They're not commercials leading up to the fights. They're not in local newspapers. Why is it that when a guy like Terence Crawford, unifies the division and then goes up in weight and fights a champion right off the bat, why isn't he on, every local morning show? Why isn't he on the news? Why isn't he doing appearances on the night show, the late night shows and stuff?
Yeah.
Why isn't he on talk shows? Why isn't he being introduced to the general public? And the answer is because the boxing promoters aren't doing that kind of work. I have fights for Bellator, and they're throwing me on local news programs, get me in every newspaper. I mean, and I used to do that for myself for boxing, just to promote my fights around New York City. But, when you're talking about large-scale fighters doing, 6-figure fights, 7-figure fights, why isn't it being widely promoted?
That is actually a really good point. I never really thought about that. Unless it's, Floyd Mayweather, you don't see any boxers.
Right, but Floyd Mayweather is
on
doing
anything.
it himself. Floyd is doing it himself. So it's not like, he's his own promoter. So he's promoting himself. It's not like somebody else is doing it because he's Floyd. Floyd creates his own drama, his own buzz, and puts himself out there. That's why he is who he is. No one helped him get there.
So you'd say HBO, HBO Boxing, for example, is pretty poor in terms of how they're marketing their individual fighters?
Well, I'm not going to point the finger and say it's HBO or it's a particular promoter, but you can't deny that.
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey used to go on the Ellen Show, and she was on, I can't think off the top of my head of what the names of all these friggin' but she was introduced to the mainstream people, like housewives and, people turned on the TV at work and things like that. People who are watching cooking shows or, want to hear latest celebrity buzz. She was mixed in like she was a celebrity. And not just Ronda Rousey, but like Conor McGregor. He made a name for himself because the UFC and MMA is using their platform to introduce the general public to their athletes and their superstars.
Do you think that, well, I'm assuming you feel the same way in regards to women's boxing and how women's boxing it needs to be promoted much better and more?
I think the sport of boxing itself. I mean, women's boxing is so far behind. I mean, it would be nice to be able to get some, some popular female faces to go out there and promote us and say, hey, look, these girls are doing this too, but is boxing as a whole is about 15 steps behind. 2% of the boxing population is making in the 6 and 7 figures, and the rest of us are friggin' broke, working full-time jobs, doing this, professionally. And it's not just women. It's tons of guys out there too, 17-0, 18-0, scratching towards the top for their one chance that they might never get.
How can the public help out? How can the public support the sport more?
You can't put it on the public, because if the public don't know it's there, right? Like, what are they supposed to do? If the public doesn't know it's there, what are they supposed to do? It is really in the hands. You have to take personal responsibility for fighters. Like, we can only do so much ourselves, but promotional companies, promoters are supposed to be promoting. So I really, look, if these guys are making 6 and 7 figures, they got to have enough smarts in between them to figure out how to make it better, but it's almost like nobody wants to, right? Nobody wants to make it better.
I see. That's kind of tough when you have such a fantastic sport, and you have people that are truly dedicated like yourself and the fighters, and it's not being showcased to the masses and pushed to the masses to say, hey, get behind this, support this as much as you can, and also which is why I went to MMA, because they do that there, and I can't. Was one person, I can only raise my voice and shout about it and get as much promo for myself as I can. But, if the sport doesn't come around, I ain't going to sit around and wait for it.
So I have a quick question. I have a quick question. What's your overall, long-term plan for your career in MMA? Is it, are you chasing a title right now, or are you just kind of, playing it fight by fight?
Step by step, it's like I said from the beginning when I was going to do 2 sports that I was going to go where the opportunities were. I refuse to take any more boxing fights that don't mean something, right? Like, I don't want to fight non-contenders. I don't want to fight non-title fights. I don't want to fight irrelevant fights just to sell tickets and be on someone else's undercard. And if I'm not going to get a big fight in boxing, then I'm going to continue to build my brand in MMA. And if that means having 3 or 4 fights in a row for MMA, then of course my goal is eventually going to be the best at whatever it is I'm currently doing.
Absolutely. What goes into the training from both sides? Like, how are you able to cut off the boxing training regimens and just focus on MMA training, or is it like a mix of both?
It's kind of a mix of both, but when I know what I'm fighting, that's what I have to focus on. For my last MMA fight, my MMA coach would not let me go anywhere near the boxing gym because he wanted to break bad boxing habits that don't translate well in the cage. And when I had my last boxing match, my boxing coaches wanted me to stay the hell out of the cage because my distance and timing and everything was off because of the kicks and stuff. So it's really tricky. Like, people think that doing both sports is easy, but it's really not. It's not an easy transition. It's not easy to try to teach your body to do things and then switch off right away, especially since MMA is so new to me. So, training is training. I have a game plan based on what my next fight is.
Do you think eventually you're going to drop one sport off and focus on the other, or?
No. Like I said, I'm going to go where the opportunity is. I'm going where the money is. I'm going where the opportunities are. I'm 36 years old. I have no intention of writing off MMA or writing off boxing, but, both of my promoters are on my team. So they both want to see what's best for me. They've agreed that the better the opportunity is, the more sense it makes for me to do whatever fight comes along. So, I'm just training, and what comes up, I'll be ready for it. I'm a fighter.
I like that. I like that. I'm a fighter. That says it all. That says it all. I'm willing to take on anything and whatever obstacles in life and trials and tribulations that may come forward to any of us. You have to be a fighter to get over it, deal with it. And, everything that you've accomplished in life and the things that you've experienced in life, you are definitely an inspiration to so many people, including us as well. There's some things that we've all, dealt with in life, and you have to dig deep to get over it, overcome it. And I personally applaud you.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Well, we're going to let you go because I know you have the kids over there you're working with in training. But we do definitely appreciate your time and coming on and giving us some insight into both sports as well as the business side and the professional side.
Very good. Well, it's great talking to you guys.
You as well.
All right.
Yep. We hope to have you on soon again.
Of course.